Okay, so we come to our next video and the last. So today we're going to explain about the hypothesis test. Now, for the hypothesis test, we need first, of course, to do the previous two tasks, which is normality and homogeneity, because we have a lot of hypothesis tests that depends on the data itself. So for our data, because we already do the task and in conclusion, they are normal and they are distributed normally and of course homogeneous. So we're going to use one of the tasks of the hypothesis task that um, we use if the data is normally distributed and homogeneous, which is independent t-task. Now, again, as usual, open your SPSS app. All right, after you have your SPSS app open, we go to variable view and type score and group. So it's basically this type is like almost the same as normality and homogeneity. We change the decimal to 0 as usual, and we change the values. So for like the second table here, because back in the normality and homogeneity we use class, but for this independent t-task, we're going to change the name into group. It's actually like the same. You can also use class. So it's going to go up the step in the end, which is will be more easy for you to understand if you change the class into group. So if you want to change like um the task that you already did, which is using like the class name, it's okay. But for today, we're going to change the class into group. So it's really, again, up to you. So we're going to click for the values. Now, the difference for the hypothesis task in this independent t-task, for the data, we only gonna choose the positive data. So for normality and homogeneity, we use like the pre-test data and also post-test. But for this hypothesis independent t-test, we only gonna choose or we only gonna use the post-test data. So as usual, we're going to put the value into number 1. Then we're going to label like the previous test. But remember, this is a big note, only the post-test data. So experimental class postas. So here we only have like two, So different from the first data because we have 4, but in this hypothesis independent t-task, we only have 2. So for value number 2 will be control class postas. That add and then click OK. The previous data is the same. We're going to copy the only post this data. So copy that. All right, after that, we're going to click on Analyze, and then we're going to click on Compare Means, and we're going to use Independent Sample t-task. Going to click that, and then we're going to move the score into test variables and grouping variable. And then after that, we're going to click on define groups and we're going to put the code that we already put inside. So for group 1, which is like experimental class process, it's number 1. And for the control class process is number 2. So like that. Continue and then click OK. Now, to check if the data has significant difference or not, we're going to focus on the significant value here. So it's like the table number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So we're going to focus on that. If the data is more than 0.05, the data have no significant difference. But if it's below or less than 0.05, the data has significant difference. So if it's more, it will be called null hypothesis, but if it's less, it will be called alternative hypothesis. Now we're going to check here. It's 0.003, which is less than 0.05. So for this data, we got 0.003, which is less than 0.05. So in conclusion, this data is hypothesis alternative, which is this data has a significant difference in it. So that's all for the video that I'm gonna show you guys. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.